Let me ask you a question. What appeals to you more? Raw physical strength or intelligence? Who does win in a fight? The world's strongest man or the world's smartest? Saitama, a man who has broken past all known limitations, a physical embodiment of strength itself. He's on a level of his own, untouchable by anyone or anything, to the point that it's boring for him. And Rick Sanchez, a self-made super genius who can invent or create anything, widely known as the smartest being in every conceivable universe. And...
relaxed enough?
I admire you, Rick. Rick, here's...
he's an asshole.
But as interesting as this matchup is, I found it difficult to put these characters in a versus scenario, since their individual strengths could be hard to gauge due to the lack of competition they have in their respective universes. Especially Saitama, who has yet to use his strength at its full potential, making it pretty difficult to accurately power scale him, despite what Dragon Ball Twitter may say. Saitama, a gag character. You can gag on my dick and balls if you think he beaten Goku. Anime has gags all the time, but they're not taken And it was in my struggle to measure their strengths that I came to realize that despite being opposites in nearly every way, these two characters actually share the same fundamental weakness, an Achilles heel that acts as the foundation for both of their characters. And that weakness is that they are victims of their own success. Put simply, Rick and Saitama's biggest weakness is themselves. Okay, I get it. It's a bit of a stretch to say that these two vastly different characters have such similar inherent character flaws, but hear us out on this. When watching One Punch Man, what would you say Saitama's main conflict is? Is it the monsters he faces? Okay, so it definitely isn't about the villains. Well, then is it about the fact that he's prematurely bald at the age of 25? Okay, maybe that's part of it, but the biggest issue we see Saitama grapple with is boredom. He's become so strong that he can no longer find joy in the craft he dedicated his life to mastering. He's a professional hero for fun who no longer sees the fun in being a hero. And this results in Saitama being depressed. And we see the symptoms of this depression in his lack of initiative. The fact that he spends all day watching TV or reading manga, to the point that he doesn't even do his own chores anymore. However, despite being unhappy with his life, he also refuses to seek alternative solutions, not taking up other hobbies, but rather sticking to being a hero with this unrealistic hope that he will one day find someone strong enough to give him the happiness that once came with each battle.
Now let's look at Rick Sanchez. He's a self-taught super genius who's often regarded as being the smartest and most powerful person in his universe, with feats that include fighting literal gods in hand-to-hand combat, collapsing an entire intergalactic republic while simultaneously breaking out of jail, creating a portable means of interdimensional travel, and he's shown to be able to freeze time at his own discretion. However, unlike One Punch Man, we actually see Rick struggle to defeat his opponents, and at times, even lose. But like Saitama, we haven't seen Rick go all out in terms of overall strength against an opponent. It's because for the most part, Rick doesn't care if he loses any given fight, and this directly ties into the only time Rick has actually lost in any sort of impactful way. Every time Rick Sanchez loses, it's always on an emotional level. Similar to Saitama, Rick's greatest weakness is a mental one. Rick Sanchez has reached a level of intelligence that keeps him isolated from the world around him, using alcohol and a false sense of bravado as a way of coping with his inability to relate with and connect to those around him. And by doing so, he inadvertently self-jeopardizes any potential relationships he could have.
Now that we've established that both of these characters suffer from some form of ongoing mental illness, let's take a look at individual case studies from both shows and compare how depression is represented and treated in these different stories. Let's start with Saitama. For a character that has inhuman strength, speed, and endurance, he is surprisingly relatable. I mean, I personally can't relate to having to kill a monster every time I want to take the trash out. However, I can relate to not wanting to get out of bed in the morning, or struggling to find the joy in hobbies that once made me happy. Watching this superhuman being struggle with issues as common and relatable as depression humanizes the character in a way I think many other superhero franchises struggle to do. At times, One Punch Man feels less like a traditional action shonen more like a character study into the psyche of a Superman-esque superhero. And that's the hidden beauty of One Punch Man. It's humanity. There are many things that make the first season of this show great. It's amazing animation, a beautiful soundtrack, and fantastic voice acting. However, at the heart of this show, what keeps you watching are the characters. Characters like Moomin Rider, a regular man who, in a world of psychics, monsters, and aliens, tries to do what he can to help the innocent. Or Genos, the overly serious cyborg hell-bent on seeking revenge on the people who took his family away from him, who's yet to realize that being a hero isn't simply about the flashy gadgets and weapons, but about the desire to want to help others. And of course, the one-punching man himself, Saitama. On paper, this story shouldn't work, but it does. By giving Saitama a weakness as vulnerable and honest as depression, it gives what should be an incredibly shallow and boring character an extra dimension, helping him to break free from the mold of what a typical shonen protagonist is supposed to look and act like. Now, if I had to pick a single scene from the show that I think encapsulates this internal battle we see Saitama go through, I think it would be his fight against Boros in the Season 1 finale. Now, this fight scene, without any hyperbole, might be one of the greatest fight scenes in any anime ever. The animation is flawless, the camera shots are dynamic and exhilarating, and that music though? But I think all of the glitz and glamour of this fight scene tends to overshadow its themes. When you watch this fight for the first time, the show makes you believe that it's almost an even match, that Saitama has finally met his equal in battle. Not only does Boros survive Saitama's punches, but we watch as he batters Saitama around, knocking him through walls, and even at one point, he gets kicked so hard, he gets launched onto the surface of the moon. However, fast forward to the end of the fight, as the dust settles, we find that Saitama has the same bored, sad expression, with Boros coming to the realization that this was never an even fight by any means. You could hardly even call it a fight. Saitama could have ended it at any point in time, yet he didn't. It's because in the same way that we see ourselves in Saitama, Saitama sees himself in Boros. He's another being that became too powerful for his own good, causing him to become dissatisfied and bored with his life, longing for that exhilaration that comes with losing. And Saitama gave him that. It reminded him of what a real fight feels like, of what failure feels like, because Saitama wants the same thing. I feel like the Boros arc was the showrunner's way of saying that Saitama will never have a physical equal in the series, or at least not one in the traditional sense. Saitama finally found a being capable of withstanding his punches, yet it still wasn't enough. He was still too strong. He was still a victim of his own success. Now, who does that remind us of?
When looking at Rick Sanchez, his biggest strength and weakness, as we have already established, are the exact same. But why does Rick's intelligence work against him? The answer is simple. Despite Rick being capable of godly feats and an intellect that surpasses everybody else, Rick is only human, and humans crave social interaction. In fact, a study done by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology discovered that, quote, people who are forced to be isolated crave social interactions similarly to the way a hungry person craves food, end quote. With Rick being as smart as he is, he inadvertently forced himself to be one and alone. With his intellect ruining relationships humans need to thrive. We see this several times throughout the show, primarily through Rick's toxic relationship and interactions with his family. Although the details are still unclear for the audience, we know that Beth has psychological trauma which stems from her relationship with Rick in the past. Yet present day Rick still hasn't changed, as can be seen with how he treats Jerry Smith. This inability to craft long-term meaningful relationships is what makes Rick depressed. Now, let's talk about the most compelling evidence linking Rick with depression: unity. In Season 2, Episode 3 of Rick and Morty, a character was introduced to give the audience a deep look into Rick's true character and mental health. More specifically, how much he was suffering at a time many people considered Rick to be at his peak within the show. Because if anybody could beat the legendary Kate Baldy in a fight, it would be Season 2 Rick Sanchez. In the episode Autoerotic Assimilation, we see Rick build up an existing relationship with the character Unity, and throughout the episode we see the relationship develop until it all comes crashing down, leaving the audience with new pieces of information about Rick. The most compelling of said information is said by Unity herself.
Forgive me for doing this in notes. I'm not strong enough to do it in persons.
I realize now that I'm attracted to you for the same reason I can't be with you. You can't change.
And I have no problem with that, but it clearly means I have a problem with myself.
I'm sure there's no perfect version of me. I'm sure I'll just unify species after species and never really be complete.
But I know how it goes with us. I lose who I am and become part of you. Because in a strange way, you're better at what I do without even trying. Yours. And nobody else's. Unity.
This emotional letter by Unity emphasizes how Rick's destructive habits and personality ultimately leave Rick alone and isolated, furthering the cycle of his intellectual isolation, which then causes him to seek temporary validation and fun as an outlet. Additionally, we catch another glimpse of just how far Rick has gone when he can't even remember what humans are called. Rick recognizing this cycle himself at the end of the episode leads him to substance abuse and an attempt at suicide. This is Rick Sanchez at his lowest point. This is him losing.
Now, what can we learn from these two characters? Is the point of their stories merely to teach us that no matter how successful you'll get, you'll always be unhappy, therefore there's no point in even trying anymore? No, not really. What they do teach us is that success doesn't always equal happiness. And this is an idea that I think has been forgotten in recent years. Nowadays, there is so much pressure on everyone, young people especially, to be perfect. It doesn't help that social media only reinforces this idea, with influencers and celebrities constantly trying to maintain an online persona of a perfect life by showing off their wealth, posting videos of their exuberant vacations and their perfect bodies, creating unrealistic body and lifestyle standards. It reinforces this idea that the only way someone can be happy is if they're always productive and constantly successful, when that's not really true.
Both Rick and Saitama are living contradictions to this idea. They've both achieved and accomplished everything they could desire, yet both find themselves feeling empty, wanting more out of life. However, despite them both suffering from depression, the writers make an effort to show that these characters are indeed capable of experiencing happiness and that they aren't just tethered to their flaws. They do this by reminding us of the value of human connection, showing how the ones around us can bring out the best in us. We see this in Rick's relationship to Morty, specifically how Morty brings out the best in Rick to the point where in episodes like A Wrinkle in Time, cold-hearted Rick Sanchez is willing to sacrifice his own life to save Morty. The same can be seen with Saitama's relationship with Genos in scenes as simple as them going out to eat together, or Genos being one of the few people willing to stand up for Saitama. We often become so bogged down in our constant daily grind for success that we tend to forget the value these kinds of relationships have, and that there's more to life outside of our own goals and desires. It's Saitama and Rick's failure to realize this that keeps them feeling numb and hollow. So at the end of the day, who cares who would win in a fight? As far as I'm concerned, they've both already lost.
Man, am I glad to be done with this video.
Dude, tell me about it. This video this was a long one. This was a long one.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, at least now I see the value in, like, friendship and hanging out with your boys, you know?
Yeah, for sure, you know? Like, Genos and Saitama and Morty and Rick. It's wholesome, you know?
Well, I can't wait to see the comments or video being like, oh, Saitama would win when everyone knows that Rick would 100% beat Saitama's ass in a fight, you know?
Well, I mean, like, the whole point of the video is to say that, like, we actually don't know that. But, I mean, if I had a bit of money, like, Saitama would win.
Okay, but then there's millions of Ricks, right? There are Ricks in their timelines who can freeze time, you know?
Well, it doesn't matter if he can freeze time if Saitama can literally not be tethered by everything.
Shut up.
What are you, dude? No. What are you talking about? Shut up. Lily, what's your argument? Saitama has Saitama has no limiter. There's no limit to his strength. There's literally no. It's not sci-fi. It's about literal limits to his power. Oh, we can't power scale him. Okay, whatever.